I'm going to assume I'm on. So I got on just a few minutes early. I'm going to do shoulder presses in just a minute. I wanted to talk really quick about a concept that we're talking about in my body transformation group this week and really through the whole 6 weeks. And it's this idea of joy eating versus emotional eating, which I think is maybe a little bit confusing for us women. There's so much, y'all, that I'm learning right now that I'm like so excited to share, but I'm still like in the process of processing through it myself and putting it together. That really goes back to this idea of intuitive eating and learning how to truly tap into our intuition. And I think that that is something that, especially around eating and food and nutrition and diet and our bodies, we as women have either forgotten how to do or maybe even never have done, because from such an early age, we're taught and given so many messages about what our body should look like, how we should eat. We're given messages about, different diet plans and different programs. So we early on kind of lose connection with our own intuition, which is interesting if you stop to think about it. That's like one of the most basic human things is eating, right? And then you throw in, food organizations, food companies that are literally paying people lots of money to figure out how to make food as addicting as possible. And then you throw in the fact that most of us just don't really quite know how to process through all of our emotions. You put all that together, right? These 4 things that converge on such a stress point for so many women that then creates tension and zaps us of our energy and zaps us of our joy. Because then you think about it, even when you're eating something for pleasure, you have this sense of guilt or worry, like, is this gonna make me unhealthy or make me gain weight or whatever? So it zaps the joy. So one of the things I'm trying to teach is the difference between, joy eating and giving ourselves like full permission to have that in our life, to eat for joy purposefully, and then to kind of be able to distinguish between that and emotional eating, right? So emotional eating is when we're using food to buffer away emotions. We don't know how to manage our emotions. So food, which, obviously we don't emotionally eat like broccoli. Well, I don't know. I don't. Maybe you do, but most of us are emotionally eating, chips and cookies and things like that. What those foods do is they're giving us this dopamine hit, and they're kind of temporarily helping us to buffer away those emotions. Hey, Linda. Whereas joy eating is very purposefully giving yourself permission to eat something purely for joy. And when you're doing that, notice like the energy around it is so different, right? Emotional eating, you feel small, you feel kind of powerless. You're oftentimes in sort of an unconscious space, right? Like, have you ever done, I know I've done that, where I'm like eating and I'm thinking about something, and then all of a sudden I look down and like the whole thing Oreos is gone, and you're like, what just happened, right? Whereas joyful eating is the opposite. You're like so present, you're so in the moment. You're paying attention to how the food feels and tastes, and in that case, you actually are totally in control, right? And you can apply that to anything, right? So that's the difference between the two, and I think it's so important that you add in purposeful joy eating into your life, and it's a practice, because so many of us don't know how to eat something for joy without the added guilt. But practicing having foods that you enjoy, really paying attention to how it feels in your body, enjoying it without any sort of guilt, and then pulling that mindfulness in so that when the emotional eating comes in, you also are able to, yes, toddler brain, Stacey, yes, oh my gosh. So the way I teach it is there's like 2 parts. There's many parts to the brain, obviously, but we're talking about behavior change. The prefrontal cortex, which I call our adult brain, right? This is our more evolved brain that can think long term. It can delay gratification. So it can look at the cookie and say, yes, that cookie would be good, but I want this goal. And then the toddler brain, which is our more primitive brain, is like a toddler. Like, it wants what it wants. It doesn't care. It's not thinking about tomorrow. It's just thinking about this moment. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it's going to have a hissy fit. I think there's a third element to it as well, which is that intuition, that inner guidance that I think what is what we're so disconnected from, right? So the prefrontal cortex is great shifting our mind there, but then it's also taking it a step further and even connecting more into our body and into our intuition. So again, I just want to tell you, if you're struggling with that, here's what I know for sure. Feeling guilty doesn't really ever lead us to the results that we want. It really doesn't. So emotions are fueling us, and these negative emotions, guilt is not an emotion that's going to get you long term to where you want to go. So start to practice putting joyful eating into your life in a very intentional way. So that's what I teach, intuitively intentional eating, because for a long time I felt like I had to choose between the two. Well, are we going to be intuitive or are we going to be intentional? But the truth is there's this beautiful marriage of the two that when you do it, can bring you so much peace and freedom around food and get you all the results that you want in a much less effortful kind of way. So joy eating versus emotional eating, I could go on and on. We got to do some shoulder presses. So